So I think everyone in this audience has seen or been a part of this collaborations increasingly going on, and we've all read about many of them, not only with all of you, with many others, between creators and brands. And I think we understand from the brand perspective why we want to work with storytellers such as yourselves. So the real question is, why do you guys really want to work with brands? Are they just a wallet, a funding source that you hadn't tapped into yet? Or do you really believe that you have opportunities to tell great stories and do great things in collaboration with brands?
I'll dive in first. I think that I think brands have realized that there's an incredible opportunity to connect with audiences in a way that is kind of true to what they stand for, and at the same time can be true to what we as content creators stand for. I think they're starting to be a little bit more hands-off, and I think the more hands-off they would be, the better it would be for everybody, because I feel like that brands need to continue to have confidence in great storytellers to do what we do to support what they ultimately want to achieve.
Yeah, and that's a challenge. Even if you look at, I had done something with, I think it was Wells Fargo, and we'd pitched a couple of webisode ideas, and then they wanted to test them. They said, can you go around the country and go in a curtained booth in a mall and pitch this, and we'll test it? And I realized at that point that that's the step that hasn't happened, that brands don't have the ability yet to trust either the creators or the people that they put in charge of curating the creators to make these decisions, and I think that's been one of the impediments.
And on the pro side, I guess it's as it is for them, it's high risk, high yield for creatives, because if you talk to a yogurt company, a hotel chain, a fast food place, and a guy that makes hot air balloons, one of the four of them might be the Howard Hughes of branded entertainment. You might form a new relationship with somebody outside the existing 70-year momentum of the entertainment industry. There's pros to that momentum, like the fact that they already know in that industry that you have to make 10 bad things to have one good thing come out of it. There's cons, though, too, like the fact that the reason those 10 things are bad is because they're heavily involved.
Or that suddenly you have a guy who makes hot air balloons giving you comments.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
But what if that hot air balloon guy says, you know what, I'd just make it light. Just make the tone light so that lightness is there, and then he never says anything else, and he doesn't have a parent company.
And the check clears.
Just keep mentioning helium. But that's big hot air balloon. Nobody wants to be in business with those assholes. But
But I think, this goes to a point, and Dan, you and I had, the first time you told me I want to work more with brands, I was kind of like, come on, like you're very, obviously your creative integrity matters. It matters to all three of you, and you've lived in the realities. And you actually said to me, anybody who's going to fund something I create, whether that's a studio or a network or a brand, I know has a commercial objective. And so as long as I'm aware of that and that's factored in, that's the acceptable price of it.
Well, and in a way, that model that at least the two of us come from, which is broadcast television, in the idea of working with a brand, to us, I think what's appealing about it is you're removing a layer. This old idea of, all right, the people that are at NBC are going to guess what Palmolive will want to be a part of and sell, and so they're going to try to change our material to be appropriate to that. To remove that layer of interference, yes, there will be a new dynamic that has to emerge with the advertisers, but certainly television and advertising have always been partners. And this middleman came along and said, no, we'll make the decisions. So I don't know, I think there's a real promise to removing that middleman.
Agreed.
The greatest movie ever sold, which hopefully many of you in the room saw, and if not, you should. What's brilliant in that, when I was on a branded content jury at Cannes, we were deciding whether or not to give it an award, and there were people who do what I do for a living who are like, we can't give him an award, he's making fun of what we do. And it's like, A, lighten up, but B, the movie couldn't have been made without brands paying for it. So it was like this subversive kind of meta thing where it was branded content about branded content, right?
Paid for by branded content.
Paid for by branded content.
Yeah, I think that's what you start to see is I think there are bigger brands that are infinitely more precious about kind of what they see their brand identity of being, and those are usually like bigger legacy brands are much more protective. I think there are a lot more risk-taking younger brands that want to make a big splash, they want to make noise, they're willing to put their money behind some really smart, noisy, innovative content, and they win. They win as a result for that. But I think that the bigger companies are starting to see that they could work with folks like this and actually create something that would be talked about, but they have to be willing to have faith in the creative.
Well, and faith that the audience is savvy enough to differentiate, maybe in a way they couldn't in the 50s,
Yeah.
that we're being funny. This is an advertisement.
It's a joke.
This does not mean, I always think of when Old Spice, and you were involved in that, weren't you, Scott, somehow? Was
No.
that you? No. But Old Spice started putting funny stuff on their product. And I thought, yeah, people are ready now. People can understand that we're all humans.
That's the great thing about the internet is that people have become. There's a more honest perception of perception. I think there's going to be like these huge milestones, like a peanut butter company is going to have to make a show with the F word in it. Something's going to
Fucking
happen.
GIF.
And they'll strike upon some model that'll work, and everyone will observe it working, and then it'll become the model. Like whether it's like, well, it's not brought to you by GIF, it's brought to you by a thing that everyone knows is GIF. But I don't know what the hell it'll be. But those thresholds are going to have to be, breached.
They'll make like 700 GIFs. That'll be their way in.
But the problem is right now is those
He's
people
right.
who are in those people who are in those positions right now aren't empowered enough to make those choices.
They'll get
because
fired.
they'll get fired. The fear is if you take a chance, if you take a risk, you do something cool and creative, you'll get fired.
When we talk
I
about
just realized we're up here to provide the creative perspective, but it's just us going like, now's our chance to,
I know.
to just tell them what they're thinking without them disagreeing. Like, these guys are cheap. They're scared. You don't understand.
And what you're really saying there, and we've talked about it, is there's a gap, fundamental gap, I think, between the subversive nature of a lot of the art you create, right, and the capitalistic sensibilities and the brand sensibilities.
It's why it's subversive. So we don't want to get rid of the thing that we want to make fun of and strain against.
That's the crazy thing.
You know what I mean? It is a crazy
well,
thing.
And if you pull too much on that thread,
Oh.
we're going to enter a Noam Chomsky-like depression
Again,
here.
I mean, at Netflix, when they were like, "Oh yeah, do whatever you want," it's like, well, now who am I going to be pissed off at and make fun of? And,
But also, it's like,
and we
what are
made fun of Google. We did a thing where we were going to use the Google car. I needed a funny vehicle for one of the characters. Oh, what if he's in the Google Street View car? And it was just moderately funny until Google said, "Yeah, you can't show our car." And then we got mad, and it was like, so the car that takes a picture of everyone's house, we can't show? And then finally we had a point of view comedically on the thing. You need to get a little mad.
That is a huge, like, paradoxical philosophical dilemma. That's not even industrial. That's like a dilemma of the national psyche, because we've been such a successful empire that is so TV driven. TV has been our religion and movies, and we crave subversion, and so our subversion has been like it's like a caterpillar that eats its own cocoon, like instead of leaves. It's like, so we never turn into a butterfly. We're like, okay, put a pin in it, Harmon. It's like,
Don't get him started on
in order to
entomology. We'll be here all-
perceive television as authentic, it has to have that very subversive, and the definition of subversion has to be always updated, and the thing that you're updating it on is what was okay to be on TV
What's the
10 years
line?
ago. And so what was okay to be on TV 10 years ago is even more extreme than what's allowed to be in a commercial today.
So far, that is that line you're talking about. So you get to do, a branded movie, and people don't feel manipulated or exploited by it. They're in on the joke.
That's right.
That'll change, but I think we're in that era right now.
Dan, you said to me at one point, like, I want to create something with a brand that wins an Emmy. Like, is this realistic that brands can actually really, truly become storytellers at the highest level?
I don't want to leave this stage without popping the lid a little bit on the myth of the creative genius. Like, it's like we're as much a part of this weird culture that I was talking about. Like, people that are paid to be writers that work for, it's like, we're not punk rock. We're not. We're not allowed to question the general notion that America should exist. For instance, we're working for money, and we get fired if we generally have an unpopular opinion about the gestalt.
Or if you make something that doesn't make money.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there's another. Yes, of course. A peanut butter company can win an Emmy, because if Sony can, I mean, give me a break.
I think that's important to say. Like, the point of view you're starting us with is, how do we get creators to play ball with us? And the answer to that is, like, talk to us. We're used to playing ball.
That's
we're
right.
we're not independent anarchists.
Yeah, we wake up going,
you go,
oh, I'm made of flesh. I sold out.
Well, and you really, we're always trying to, if you're doing a show at CBS, you really want to do a show that works on CBS. You're not pitching an HBO show. And if you're pitching an HBO show, you're very mindful of what they need for their business.
We announced a show on Monday that we're doing with Refinery 29 called What We Teach Girls. And I think the amazing opportunity that brands have is to align themselves, and whether it be with content that they're either a part of in the creation, but also the marketing and promotion of. Like, this is a show that now, through Refinery 29, we're going to reach 175 plus million women around the world with a show that is incredibly valuable to that audience and incredibly valuable to that group of people. So I think that brands have the way to align with whether it be creators from day one or creators who've already made something to help put out something that it really does align with what they believe in. And I think that's what's really exciting.
The networks aren't going to go anywhere. I mean, the people working for them might go to different places, but the actual things are too old to fail. They'll keep making TV for a long time. They'll start playing the exact same game that digital is playing right now.
I think the greatest thing that we came across, and we'll use Greatest Movie Ever Sold as an example, is there was a tremendous desire to want to make things that were good. That's the thing we both have in common. It's like nobody wants to make something shitty. This is, you don't. You're coming in because you want to make something that's going to be impactful, that's going to be smart, that will hopefully resonate on some level. So for me, that was the best part. I think then it starts going to decision by committee where things start to fall apart. Like, there's not the one person who will give it the ultimate Caesar. And I think the more you can have those people that will be willing to say, no, we're going to go down this path and we're going to make it, the better it will be for the creative process.
The things that quality TV and the golden age in TV have in common right now are that on the network side, there's a laissez-faire attitude, and when there are notes, it's an individual being honest and saying, this peanut butter tastes good to me, and not, I think people want this kind of peanut butter. That's another reason why there's an incompatibility, because the methodologies are totally different. Like, it makes bad TV to be responsible to your demographic.
And I also think on the other side, to criticize us, like one of the things when I've had good experiences is when those products or those advertisers have been able to say to me, don't you worry about the demographic. You know, like I'm trying too hard to say, I think this will appeal to millennials because we want to show that they are a little lost. And when they have said, like, no, just do the show. Don't worry about that. You know, we do have the tendency to try to crack the DNA as well.
That's what Landgraf sounds like at FX. That's what Evan Shapiro, not just because he's here and I'm working for him, sounds like. In other words,
the voice of don't worry about marketing.
Yes, you be authentic. I hire you to be authentic. It'll hit or miss.
Yeah.
That's not your job, is to worry about that shit.
I think there's been a barrier to entry, and it's amazing even just talking to people that run brands will say things like, but how would we get a hold of you? How would we do this? And, we all have agents. It's actually easy to do. And I think to see an openness, to see a company say, to see Evian say, hey, you have any ideas? I mean, I think they would be surprised how quickly Dan Harmon would say, I'd love to come in and talk.
Yes.
Yeah, you know what I mean? I don't think that presumption is there.
Right.
I don't think that presumption is there.
In fact, Dan Harmon has a studio in Burbank called Starburns Industries, Emmy.
So he's fine, but
Oscar
if you think about Mitch or Morgan are still looking for
Well, I have
boondoggle.
9,752 more questions, but no more time. So please join me in thanking Morgan, Dan, and Mitch. Go on, get out of here.